Now, as the name of the video implies, this is part 8 of the story, so unless you want to have no clue what's going on, I'd recommend starting at part 1 and working your way back here if you enjoy it. I'll include a link to all previous parts in the description below. And now, without further ado, let's jump right back into the story. We're right where we left off, with Leia standing over a wounded, handless Mara Jade aboard the Falcon, about to strike her down until Anakin interrupts, telling her it's not the Jedi way to do so. But Leia shakes her head slowly and menacingly and replies, "She was sent here to kill you." Anakin, who again looks much like he once did, only older and with a shaved and scarred head, gives one firm nod, looking very calm. "And she has failed to do so, Leia." We see Leia's grip on her saber tighten ever so slightly, and her eyes darken just a little. "And what, are we just supposed to let her live?" "No, Father, no. I'm doing this for you, to protect you." Those words seem to sting Anakin, and he closes his eyes, and for a moment we're taken to the past on Mustafar, and Anakin is saying that very same thing to Padme. A moment later, we're again in the Falcon, and Anakin says to Leia, "She is only the first of many to come. Do you plan on killing them all?" Leia looks resolute and says, "If that's what it takes to protect you, then yes." Anakin gives her a sad sort of smile and says, "It's not your protection I need, my daughter, but rather your guidance to continue to rid myself of the dark side fully." At this, Mara Jade lets out a laugh and says, "Rid yourself of the dark side? Ha! You will never be able to rid yourself of him." With a small motion of his hand, Anakin asks Leia to lower and deactivate her saber, and after a moment or two, she does. Anakin then begins to pace slowly, his eyes on Mara Jade as he speaks, though she refuses to look at him. "You are right. Never will I rid myself of him fully. A shadow of him will always linger over me, as will one always linger over you." Anakin then stops his pacing right in front of Mara and right next to Leia, and waits until Mara locks eyes with him before he continues. "He already knows you failed him. He always knows. Which means you cannot return to him, or he will destroy you." Mara gives a cynical smile and says, "And what, you expect me to follow you down the path to the light now?" Anakin shakes his head. "Of course not, but I am willing to let you go and follow whatever path you'd like, if you give me one piece of information." Mara seems to consider it for a moment, but then quickly reaches out with her hand towards her saber, which is still being grasped by her severed hand a few feet away, but it doesn't so much as budge. She looks up again and sees that Anakin also is reaching out towards it. Anakin, a slight, almost arrogant smile on his face, shakes his head and says, "You will never again wield that saber, no matter what you decide." Mara gives up, lowers her hand and sighs before saying, "What information could I possibly know that the mighty Lord Vader wouldn't?" Anakin ignores her words, pulls Mara's saber to her, and hands it to Leia before crouching down in front of her. "He sent you to Jakku once, didn't he?" Mara says nothing to that, but instead looks away. Anakin leans in closer and waits for Mara to again meet his gaze before saying, "All you have to do is tell me why he sent you there, and I'll let you go free." We then jump scenes, and we get a shot of the Death Star before we're inside the throne room and see the Emperor, who looks none too pleased as usual, as he sits and gazes out upon the galaxy. We then hear a beep, and the Emperor hits a button on his throne, and a blue hologram of Grand Admiral Thrawn appears before him. Thrawn falls to a knee and says, "Your Majesty, the rebels have managed to secure the plans to the Death Star and flee Scarif." The Emperor then snaps back, "Yes, I know." Thrawn then says, "Of course, Your Majesty, but you may be pleased to hear that I was able to track the rebels back to their hidden base in the Yavin system. My fleet stands ready to—" "No," the Emperor quickly interrupts. "No, I believe it is time to test the full destructive power of this battle station and end the rebellion once and for all." We're then with Luke, and seem to be again in a Sith temple in an otherwise unknown location. He sits cross-legged in deep meditation, his arms resting on his legs, and the opened Sith holocron floating before him. We then see Ahsoka approach him from behind, and after standing there for a moment or two, she folds her arms and lets out an impatient sigh. The holocron then closes and floats down to the ground before Luke opens his eyes and says, "Trying to make sense of all this is exhausting. The one who created this thing was clearly insane." Ahsoka gives a nod and says, again with that dark echo in her voice, "It was created by the son of my master, and he was—" Luke finishes for her, "Obsessed with power? Yeah, I know. I've learned much about him." Ahsoka then asks, "And does that include how to unleash the Force?" Luke gives a wry smile and a disgusted look at the hologram. He rambles on and on about the secrets of the Force he wishes he wouldn't have learned. Ahsoka looks worried. "So it doesn't explain how to unleash the Force?" "No, he says how, all right," Luke quickly replies. "It takes a great merger of the darkness and the light. It's the only way it can be done on a large permanent scale. Luke then picks up the holocron and adds, apparently though, merging a light and dark holocron is another way, though it only grants one moment of absolute truth and clarity or power. Ahsoka reaches out her hand then, and slowly pulls the holocron to her. She eyes it closely as it floats and slowly turns above the palm of her hand, and she asks, how was the son of my master able to unleash the Force then? Luke gets to his feet, his eyes locked on Ahsoka as if he's curious to see how she'll react to what he's about to tell her. He was only able to unleash the Force with the help of his sister. Leia, Ahsoka mutters, her face darkening. It is as I feared all along then. I will need both of you. Luke then continues, still seeming to try and gauge Ahsoka's reactions to everything he tells her. Apparently, she helped him out of love for her father of all things, and a desire to save him from death, which she achieved with the power she gained by unleashing the Force. Ahsoka seems confused by this. She too had that power? Why didn't it drive her insane like it did her brother? Luke shrugs. He doesn't talk much about her, though he does mention she was murdered by a jealous young apprentice of his father's, though his father never believed it was his apprentice that could kill his precious daughter. The son knew better, however. He even said it was this that caused his father to fall to the dark side, not being kicked out of the Jedi Order as many believed. Ahsoka cannot seem to help but give a small wicked grin as she says, is that so? Luke gives her a knowing smirk in return. I know all you want is to use me, and that when I've unleashed the Force and your master is free, you'll seek to destroy me. Ahsoka shakes her head. No, that's not the plan at all. Mistrust and betrayal have always been our downfall. That must end. Luke smirks again. You mean things like murdering your master's daughter to earn all of his affection must end? Ahsoka then gets angry for a moment, real angry, and snaps back, sounding almost nothing like Ahsoka, and rather entirely like the echo that has been in her voice. You understand nothing, young one. His daughter is what held him back from embracing his true destiny. Ahsoka then suddenly falls to her knees, and she looks to be in a great deal of pain as she puts her hands to her head and cries out. Luke initially moves to help her, but stops himself, and instead looks on in curiosity. We're then suddenly back on the Falcon, and we see Anakin, his face distant and confused, as he hears the voice of Ahsoka, the true voice of Ahsoka, without the dark echo. Anakin? Anakin, is that really you? I need you. Help me. We then hear Leia say, who stands right in front of him, Father? And it seems to snap Anakin out of his momentary trance. Leia then continues, Father, what is it? What's wrong? But Anakin only shakes his head, and suddenly Leia is talking about how she can't believe that he let Mara Jade go, that this will end up being a mistake. Anakin shakes his head to that, and tells Leia that Mara's destiny will now be her own, at least it will be when he destroys the Emperor. To this, Leia gives him a look, and hesitantly asks, what do you mean when you destroy the Emperor? Anakin puts his hands on her shoulders, and gives her a comforting smile and says to her, on your first encounter on Tatooine, you told me you'd never understand the power of the dark side. And though I hope that never changes, there is one part of it that I do need you to understand. Until the Emperor is destroyed, I will never be fully free of it. The bond between master and apprentice is too strong. He will hunt me until I am destroyed. Leia folds her arms and pulls away. And so you will hunt him in return? Anakin sighs. It's not that simple, Leia. She then replies, not that simple? Like why it's okay for you to seek out the Emperor and destroy him, but it's not okay for me to destroy that assassin sent here to kill you? Anakin is about to reply when they're interrupted by Han, who says to Leia, hey, sorry and all, but the doctor wanted me to find you, and let you know you're receiving a transmission. Leia and Anakin exchange a nervous look, and Leia asks, from who? Han shrugs carelessly, some senator named Organa. Without a word, Leia rushes off, and Han looks over at Anakin and says, so, you're the one who was in the supply crate, huh? Anakin just gives him a look and says, yeah, something like that. We're then inside the sterile white compound again, and see Leia talking to a bluish hologram of Bail Organa. Leia asks, how did you find me? And Bail just gives her a look. Please, Leia, you transferred an obscene amount of credits from one of my accounts to someone on Lothal Minor of all planets. You wanted me to know where you were and what you were doing. Leia says nothing to that, and Bail continues, tell me, did it work? Is he Anakin Skywalker again? Leia gives him a quick, frustrated look. As I tried to tell you, he was already Anakin Skywalker when you voted to put him to death. Bail looks slightly ashamed at that and then says, things have become very complicated since you left, Leia. We've gotten our hands on the plans to the Death Star, and thanks to Galen Erso, it looks like there is a design flaw that we can exploit. But what? Leia presses. But it will require a perfect shot, Bail explains. So perfect that some of our best pilots don't even know if the computer can hit it. But maybe, Leia gives a frown, but maybe a Jedi could hit it? And one who was once renowned as the best pilot in the galaxy, perhaps? It's Bail's turn to give a frown. Will he do it, Leia? Will Anakin help us? Leia thinks for a moment. Only if he's granted full immunity for all crimes Darth Vader committed. Bail immediately shakes his head. Impossible. There's no way the council would ever go for that. Leia is about to protest when we hear Anakin call out as he comes in from behind. I'll do it. I'll help you destroy this thing, he promises. Leia turns and looks at Anakin and says, they'll just lock you up again once you've helped them. Anakin gives a sly smirk and whispers to her, that's only if they can catch me again. Leia returns the smirk, and then Anakin says to the hologram of Bail Organa, it's good to see you again, Senator Organa. Bail looks stunned, too stunned to say anything for a long moment, but finally mutters something about how it's also good to see him. Bail then goes on to tell them to hurry, that they fear they've been tracked back to Yavin, and that the Death Star could show up at any moment. They are evacuating, but slowly. They want to lure in the Death Star and execute their attack, feeling this may be their best chance they're ever going to get to destroy the thing. We then jump forward and see the Millennium Falcon coming in for a landing back at Yavin Base, and there to greet them after the ship finishes landing and the ramp begins to lower is Bail Organa along with a small security force and 2 droids. As Anakin and Leia come down the ramp, R2 goes dashing off towards them, while C-3PO makes a comment about how he too is happy to see the princess alive and fully functional. But it's of course not Leia that R2 rushes up towards, but instead Anakin, who crouches down to greet him. But before he can say anything, R2 gives him a good shock, which causes the security force to all raise their weapons, as if they're expecting Anakin to go dark side on everyone and everything. Instead, Anakin just says to R2, I know you're mad at me, buddy, and you have every right to be, but I'm going to need you up there, just like the old days. So can you forgive me, or at least put your anger aside for a little while we get the job done again? R2 seems to consider it before letting out some happy beeps and chirps. That's when Bail Organa approaches them, his face grim, and he says, we've just gotten word that the Death Star has entered the system. It's now or never. Anakin nods. Just point me and R2 to a ship, and we'll handle this. Bail looks at Anakin, and though he only hesitates for a moment before responding, it seems as if he has a long inner debate before saying, we have an old X-Wing for you. Your call sign will be Red 5. We then get a shot of the Death Star as it approaches Yavin, and then we're once again inside and in the Emperor's throne room, and see him standing near his throne, again looking none too pleased, as he looks down upon Mara Jade, who's kneeling before him at the base of the steps, her head bowed to the floor. You are a fool for returning to me, assassin, the Emperor says, but Mara Jade quickly replies, I had to return to you, my master, to warn you he knows about Jakku. The Emperor is quiet for a long moment and then asks, how do you know this? Mara replies, he asked me about it, knew you had sent me there too, but the Emperor interrupts, and what did you tell him, assassin? Mara risks looking up briefly. A lie, of course, I would never betray you. The Emperor then suddenly turns and approaches his large window, and as he looks out it, we can just make out some tiny dots approaching, which are no doubt the rebel attack force. He snarls at them and says, you come to destroy me, apprentice. You will not find that as easy as you imagine. He then turns back towards Mara Jade, who immediately lowers her head back to the floor and cringes, as if expecting to be zapped by force lightning, but it never comes. Instead, he says to her, return to Jakku, my assassin, and await further instructions from me. If it never comes, it means I have failed this day, and my last command is for you to destroy Anakin Skywalker by any means necessary. He must never learn all the secrets of Jakku. And that is where this part ends. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to let me know what you think of the story so far and where it might be headed. So let me know in the comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.